Welcome, everybody. This is Darren Shulman once again with another interview. Today, I am super excited to introduce one of the true legends in the field, Jim Starlin, and with him is Jameson, who are the collaborative team behind the upcoming DREADSTAR Returns. So let's kick this off. Jim, I guess you probably get asked this a lot. There it is. You're one of the legends of the industry. You created some of the most iconic characters in the Marvel Universe, talking Thanos, Drax, the Infinity Gauntlet. How does it feel to not only have your creations make it onto the big screen, but have that crossover into sort of mainstream public consciousness beyond sort of comic book fans? How does that feel to see that?
It's been rather surreal. It was strange from the start. The weekend that the Infinity War came out, I was doing a convention, I think it was New Jersey. And I came home to my place in the woods in upstate New York, and I usually had some TV shows or something that I recorded, and on DVR, and I hit the Stephen Colbert Late Show, and after having finished the convention, I figured, okay, now to settle back into real life, and I turned on the Late Show, and there's Stephen Colbert doing a Thanos joke. And I'm going, this may have more legs than I would have thought. And it's been strange for the last two and a half years now.
Thanos has been on The Simpsons.
Yeah.
It's brought up all the time. The movies brought up that there's a new show called Solos, and they were like, they brought up the Endgame. I was like,
and every time you turn around, somebody's snapping their finger at me. So it's bigger and longer. It's Andy Warhol's 15 minutes of fame extended out a little bit longer than I expected.
Yeah, Thanos has become sort of not only is he a cool villain, but if you're really into the movies, he's uniformly recognized as like the best villain out of all the Marvel movies. And so it's kind of cool to see. I mean, he's kind of behind everything, but he's the one that landed with audiences. So it must be a really proud moment to see that coming from.
And he's ended up in more political ads than any other comic book character, I
think. So more importantly, perhaps, you had a cameo in Endgame. So what can you tell us about your cameo, how it came about? Do you have sort of creative decisions to say, this is the scene I need to be because I created this guy? And how does that work?
Oh yeah. They always consult a cartoonist on how the movie should be made. In fact, I was already on the outs with Marvel editorial, and editorial kept telling the movie people they had no idea how to contact me. So I eventually just made a joke about it on Facebook, and the Russos got in touch with me that way. And that's how I found out that they had been trying and nobody knew how to get a hold of me. I came in there between movies. They were just finishing off the war, and they were just literally starting in on the next one, which had the code name Mary Jane, because they couldn't shoot around Atlanta with anything that said Infinity anything, because they would get mobbed and the police couldn't handle it. So it was a strange experience. I went there expecting to be on the same kind of bad wavelength that I was with the editorial, and the movie people just turned out to be terrific and so friendly. Marcus and McFeely, who were the script writers on it, couldn't wait to tell me everything that was going on, including every major plot point. Joe Russo's was charming, funny. I couldn't think of a friendlier guy. And there was, we were all doing the same scene together with Chris Evans, and there was about 8 of us. Which you can't see it much inside the final cut because so many of the other people got sort of edited out. But it was a large group in a VFW hall, and we did about 8 takes. And I'll tell this story, which Jamie is always amused by. That's why I keep laughing. We did about 8 takes, and I had one line. what about you? You know, how hard is that to remember? And learn about the fifth to sixth take, as Joe Russo's is doing his, you know, 4 or 5 line little bit before my one line, it suddenly hits me. I don't remember my line. It's coming toward me like a speeding train. And I'm sitting there going, something about you. And you know, it's coming, and he gets down to that last sentence, and I'm going, come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. And like he finishes the sentence, and there's this really pregnant pause, and all of a sudden I explode. What about you? And everybody on the set sort of looks over at me, and you know, they sort of say, well, I guess we're probably not going to use that take. So
That's hilarious.
It was fun. It was fun. And they were forgiving. They let me have lunch with them afterwards.
And so just for people, and so people seen the movie, I think it was the scene where Captain America is in the therapy group that you're referring to, kind of at the beginning. So if you want to go back and watch that scene and look for Jim Starlin, that's where you are, correct?
It's about 15 minutes into it, and as Chris Claremont pointed out, I didn't even realize at the time, I'm apparently running the therapy group. My character is.
I didn't realize that either.
I didn't realize it either, but he said, well, you're the one who asked the question, the leading question there. Oh, yeah, I must. And so they had given me a sports coat, so I was probably the most well-dressed person on the set at that point.
Well, I have to be honest, if I was in a movie, I would just run that scene on replay in my house nonstop, like all the time, just to, you know, it'd just be on loop, because that's really cool.
Well, the really incredible part was they had a little shot of that scene inside the ad that they ran at the Super Bowl before the movie started. And I've looked at the ad, and there's this little white dot in the middle of this establishment scene, and that's my head.
Oh, cool.
And somebody actually recognized me from that and sent me a text saying, I just saw you in the Super Bowl ad. And I thought they were drunk at the time, you know, being Super Bowl and all that. But it turned out they were right.
So I don't want to spend the whole time talking about, obviously, Endgame, but just real quick, are you happy with, I know a lot of creators get annoyed when the movie people get a hold of it and go in a different direction. Are you happy with the direction they went with the Infinity Gauntlet saga?
More pleased. You know, I mean, Gamora and Drax were fun, different ends of the spectrum as far as how things went. Gamora being very much the character I created. I mean, they stayed, she was a straight man. She's always been a straight man. So that was her role inside the Guardians. Drax, other end of the spectrum, you know, not quite anything I did. Sort of the dumb Drax from Infinity Watch with the newer image. But he's such a unique and lovable character. How could I say anything bad about him? And Thanos, you know.
Josh Brolin,
yeah,
he did well.
He was the last person I would have thought of, and now I can't think of anybody else but him playing it. And, you know, I would have to be out of my mind to say anything bad about that. If I did feel anything, and I don't, I thought they did a tremendous job. Cotton, you know, they picked very selectively out of the entire mythos. I understand why they left things out, because I've talked to the writers and directors, and it made sense in that context of making the movie and that. No, I feel like one of the luckiest people alive right now as far as the cinematics go. You know, I have no regrets on having walked into any of those theaters, and I have confidence Shang-Chi will be just as much fun.
That is a great segue. But before we do, I have to show you, I'm wearing a Thanos shirt. So he has he's even on clothing. So you also, I believe, created Shang-Chi, correct? Or part of it?
With Steve Englehart, yes.
So are you allowed to tell me if you have a cameo in that movie too? Because he is your creator.
That was right in the midst of the pandemic. No, there's no cameo.
There was talk of you getting one.
There was talk at one point, but it had. I'm 70 years old and flying out to Australia, which was where they were shooting originally before forest fires wiped out a lot of stuff. No, don't go looking for me. You'll be disappointed.
People will be buying like 1,000 tickets just to keep trying to find you, and you're like, I'm not there. So we'll save people the second viewing. Jamie, I want to kind of pivot over you for a minute because you also worked on this project. From your bio, you have many talents, but I'm curious how you broke into comics industry and kind of what interested you about that move.
Well, I always loved comics. I mean, I was like in love with Spider-Man growing up. I mean, I was going to grow up and marry Spider-Man. That was all there was to that. But and Dr. Doom, I love Doom. But I actually I met Scott Hampton at New York Comic Con, and I talked to him quite a bit, and he told me he was going to be working on American Gods, which is what I was like, oh my God, I love that book. It's like, I read it literally 4 times and laughed out loud on the train reading it. I mean, so he was like, well, I'm going to need a model to, for some of the parts and stuff, like maybe we can do some work together. And then I wound up doing photography for shots and stuff, and I actually went to locations to like the House on the Rock. I actually went to House on the Rock and did took pictures, so we had like the actual real stuff. So started helping with some of the character design and stuff with that. And it was originally just going to be me modeling it, but I wound up helping with the layouts and taking photography, and I love doing that part. So that kind of got me into the learning about how panels and such work. And then I just kind of started working with Keith Giffen. I worked with a few people and different stuff, and then I was inking over Keith Giffen, and then I got asked by Jim after being a really annoying.
She wanted a Dr. Doom sketch, and I had hurt my hands and did not want to do any drawing anymore. I wanted to be a writer, but she persisted on badgering me, pestering me,
Yes.
stalking me into doing this Dr. Doom. In which case, I found that the hand was actually working again pretty well after 3 years of rubber ball squeezing and stuff like this. And so in some way, she's very much responsible for me coming back to drawing after this. And then she just sort of hung around, and to keep her busy, I got her inking just so she'd stay out of trouble. Spend all her time in the pool hall otherwise.
It's a way to keep people out of trouble, give them the inking job. So given all those different things you've worked on, Jamie, how does inking compare to the other, you did the photography, to the modeling, and do you like inking? Is it just something to do? Is it your new kind of passion?
I really enjoy inking. I can't imagine I've done so many different types of work in the past, and I didn't know if I could ink or not. I just started I just kind of jumped into it, and I still learn a lot as I go. So but I love it. It's a fun project first off, and there's really cool stuff to get to ink in there, but it's really, I love it.
I'm always kind of surprised how intellectually she pursues this. I'm more of a instinct, kind of fly by the seat of my pants person, and she's more intellectual and clinical about it. And it really works quite well for her. I kind of marvel at it sometimes.
So we've talked about the past, we've got the introduction. Now let's talk about the present and your latest project, DREADSTAR Returns. Jim, you alluded to this, and maybe it is just as simple as someone hounding you for a sketch of Dr. Doom, but what did get you back into the comics industry? Is it really as simple as you saw your hand would work for the sketch and wanted to get back into it, or is there more to it?
Well, there was a little bit more to it. We were to generate income, I was putting together the DREADSTAR Omnibus with Ominous Press, which was basically going back and picking out the 1,500 pages that I had done on DREADSTAR and converting them into digital files that the modern media could use. And it was a lot of work. It was literally about 6 months of me just sitting there scanning the old pages and then working with a stylus on the thing to correct certain things that hadn't worked out properly on the original books. And so we had the big body of it, the omnibus was coming out. I found I could draw again, thanks to Jaime and her persistence, or that's one way of saying it, I guess.
I can be very persistent.
And basically, I just sort of said, you know, if I'm going to come back and do this, I'm going to do it on my own character. And I've been working on him already, and the gears had been going along that. I originally had I wanted to do a story originally, which was going to be the last DREADSTAR story where he dies off. And the more I worked on it, I went, well, you know, I can still do that. I have the script sort of, you know, worked out on a shelf or on a computer file really back home. But basically, I wanted something that I could do and continue to do, and this was it. So it grew sort of organically more than anything planned out.
So comics are sometimes accused of being kind of burdened by so much history that it's hard for new people to get into a series because, you know, they've been going on forever. So for someone who is unfamiliar with DREADSTAR, you mentioned there's an omnibus, but can you give us kind of the what you need to know about DREADSTAR for new people to enjoy DREADSTAR Returns?
Well, there's also a guidebook that's coming out that was written by Bob Greenberger, who researched everything and has broken all the characters down from either 2 pages down to a quarter page.
Oh, very cool.
And so there's the omnibus, which is 1,500 pages if you're feeling that ambitious. We do a little recap at the beginning of the book to let everybody know who these guys are. It's, you know, a couple pages of just a bit of
yeah, it's got like a little description and a picture of each main character. I did appreciate that when I was reading.
Yeah, that's, you know, we've got to come in and say, let new readers know what's going on there. So anybody who comes in, even though there is years and years of continuity, plus I try to write it so that you don't have to know what's going on. We're coming in 25 years after the last book, and I wrote it as it's 25 years later. DREADSTAR's found his niche in life. He was always an anarchist who didn't have a second act. He knew how to break things, but not how to fix them. He's finally found a way to put that into a steady job.
He's grown up a bit.
He's grown up a bit. You know, Eddie and Willow have come in and come back into the story. Two-Ton and Fix are also coming in, more minor characters from the back series. They have their places inside the story, and you know, we go from there. And I think it reads in such a way that it's interesting to anyone who's either a longtime reader or somebody who's new at it. I
can tell you, I was new at it. I read it thanks to the intro page, and you're right. Your writing is a great way to ease you into the story. So you don't need to have read 25 years of DREADSTAR to understand this volume. I can attest to you did that very well because I was able to pick it up.
Well, so I understand I used too many big words, but that's another story.
No, it was good. It was good. So my next question is, and again, this may be hard to answer, but I'm interested in your character design decisions. So this book has a big guy with a crazy mohawk. It's got a robot. It's got a cat dude. And then DREADSTAR just kind of is probably the only character who looks kind of like a regular guy, a little bit more muscly than everyone else. What went into your decision to have this very crazy cast of characters, but make your main character kind of, I don't want to say an average Joe, because he's definitely more than that, but you know, he doesn't have any weird kinds of crazy physical traits.
He looks like Jim.
He's a good-looking guy.
Well, when we started DREADSTAR off, he started off in a book called the Metamorphosis Odyssey series, and that was all painted panels, black and white painted panels. I was working on gray board and then working with a lot of photo reference, and all the characters in the Metamorphosis Odyssey were somebody. And DREADSTAR, because he was going to be a long-running character, I threw myself in there because I could bulk myself up, and the beard looked pretty cool, actually, I thought.
Yeah, it is
you
cool.
Put anybody on a hoodie and they look kind of ominous. I did use a lot of other people that Val Merrick and myself were both Ankadon from the original Metamorphosis series, but I had Al Milgram in there. I had Walt Simonson, Jim Sherman, Frank Miller, Frank's wife at the time, Lynn Varley. It was one of my models. Joe Rubenstein later came in to be the post-damage, the pre-damaged syzygy from the series.
Really? I
Yes.
did not know that.
Okay, so everybody, and the reason he sort of looks human is because I'm human, and as the stories went on, there was a whole race of cat characters. So that's when Eddie came into the story, the Cat Man. I was working with Bernie Wrightson, and we were bringing in some of his creator-owned characters into DREADSTAR. And one of his characters was a huge guy named Hanover Fist. And so I wanted to do Hanover's cousin. And that's where Two-Ton, the guy with the mohawk, comes in. He's Hanover Fist's cousin. Syzygy was just, his story just lent itself to him being as ugly looking as he is. Willow is the only other human looking character, I guess, in the book, and she's as far from almost being, well, she gives up her humanity as at one point in the story, and she actually brings back reclaims her humanity in the DREADSTAR Returns.
And we got Trillo.
Yes, this is the lady who is highly responsible for
The new villain.
the new Willow. She kept sending me JPEGs of hairstyles and boots and
Outfits, and I was like,
Yeah,
this is what I
warm-up
think she
outfits.
should look like. 'Cause that Gibson hairdo.
Yeah.
yeah, that went.
It's like, that's not sexy anymore.
It probably wasn't back in the 70s either, but I just sort of went with that. She looks much better now.
So, Jim, I don't want to spoil anything, but is there any sort of people modeled after famous or semi-famous folks in DREADSTAR Returns that people should kind of keep an eye out if they pick up the volume? I'm kind of leading you.
Well, there's a guy here at the beginning who's doing a bit of hunting, who comes to a bad end, and some people may recognize him.
Yeah, that's early on the book, so it's not a spoiler, but
Now, that's not a terrible spoiler, as I explained earlier.
Actually, that was already posted in places, and
Yeah. We, like a Simpson this episode, as I was explaining, started off the story in one direction and then veer off into the actual plot. And this is sort of the end of the false start. So it won't ruin the story for anybody. Our story is actually about unrequited love. And that head on a stick doesn't quite fit in.
doesn't scream unrequited love. Yeah. I've been fascinated with the teamwork that goes into creating a comic book. So do you mind kind of going a little bit of how the two of you, your process work together in terms of, are you handing over everything and then Jaime just colors it in, or is she kind of saying, hey, I think it would be helpful if we move this angle here, or how much interplay goes on in this sort of collaboration?
he FedExed me pages, and
See, I was in New York and she was in Long Beach, in California, when we were working together.
yeah, and I mean, if I said I would take a picture maybe of something and be like, can I change this a bit? Or sometimes I would just change it. Just change it, like.
Which is what an inker's supposed to do.
Yeah, so I didn't really ask very often.
She didn't know this though.
I was like, at
She
first
thought
I
she
was
was
like,
sneaking things in.
I was like, Willow's boobs keep changing sizes.
And she's good about fixing faces. I mean, everybody's all pencilers. They have their weak spots, and with me, especially female faces. And Jaime does a lot on the correcting on that. And like, as I've said before, she is the bra czar as far as DREADSTAR goes. She is determined just the right size for Willow's breasts.
I was like, yeah.
And maintains that.
I was like, there are balloons in this panel. And then
Yeah, I think I know which panel you're talking about, but
yeah.
So, Jim, I have to ask, and I don't know if you can have a favorite, but what is your favorite character in DREADSTAR Returns to draw or maybe to write for? And then, Jaime, same question. Do you have a favorite character to ink?
I love inking Eddie. I love Eddie. He's my favorite character. So, I mean, he's just so cute as a cat.
I have different ones depending on the story. I think my favorite one to draw in this particular book was Two-Time, because he was our comic relief, and it's, as you read it, it's kind of a grim story,
Yeah.
and so we needed that kind of, and so even when I'm penciling, I needed those points where I don't have to stay as dark. Here's where I can have a little bit of fun, and he was always a good relief.
I'm interested in both of your perspectives on the difference between working on a graphic novel, which kind of is done in 100 pages and this whole thing, and working on sort of an ongoing series. You know, Jim, you've done a lot of these series that have gone forever. Jaime, I know you worked on the American Gods. That was a series, I believe, wasn't it? Ongoing, as opposed to, it started out that way. So do you have perspectives on working on a project like this, which is kind of a collected volume up front?
I mean, it's the first big thing that I've worked on. I'll say that. So at first I was a little, you know, I'd get like a little nervous. I was like, oh my gosh, what if I can't get it done fast enough? But it's good because it's
A little nervous, a lot of tears and wailing at the beginning.
I actually had Neil Adams tell me, just put down a line. Just put down a line, because he saw it. He was here in California in the store, and I was just like, but what if I screw up? And he's like, white paint. I was like, just put down a line. But no, I mean, it's awesome though to have like a full-on story, you know, and then you see the collective thing rather than like 12 pages here or 14 pages here. Or so I like the continuation of it.
Yeah, having done both a lot, I like the 100-page story format. I think the pamphlet comics are going to become obsolete and a thing of the past eventually. With Kickstarter, you can afford to immediately go off to 100 pages because that's what everyone is helping you finance. Where in the past, pamphlet books financed the collection eventually.
Well, Berserker was a Kickstarter, and that is an individual comic. The Keanu Reeves one.
Yeah, that's a bit of a different mark because it's Keanu Reeves,
Right.
and I think they were going for that because I think they wanted to start up a publishing company, so the pamphlet things. And I think down the line, if they were doing it like 10 years from now, they probably wouldn't do that. I like the bigger format because, like I said earlier, you don't have to go in a straight line with your story as you do with most of the 17-page story things, because you've got limits.
Yeah.
And you have to be able to break up the thing where it ends every 20 pages. And you have to hope that everyone will have read the previous one and realize that they probably won't, so you have to repeat certain things with each book. With the 100-page book, if they've forgotten what was on page 20 by the time they're page 60, there's nothing I can do about it. You know? They're not my readership. I'm not going for them. So this is something that I enjoy much more than I did the old format. Though it is harder to sit down and start it.
So we've talked a lot about DREADSTAR Returns. It obviously looks pretty cool, and I can attest that it is really cool. Where can people get it? If someone wants to say, I want to either get DREADSTAR Returns, maybe the omnibus you mentioned, and even the guide. Do you know where people can get any of those three things?
Right now, it's the omnibus is available in some stores. The distribution through omnibus is expanding as it goes on. Right now, if you want the graphic novel, you have to go to the Omnibus website and order it through there.
It's omnibuspress.com.
Omnibuspress.com. And they have the guidebook, and you still can pick up on some of the Kickstarter bonuses that they have. Basically, that's how you got to get it right now. We are working on getting into the comic book stores, but it's not set up yet. It's nothing I can announce just yet.
So what was the website again where they can get the stuff?
Omnibuspress.com.
And is that where they can get the returns as well? Is that going to be? Okay, great.
That
so if they want to check out the stuff,
available.
that's where to go.
Yeah, there's going to be if the first books are going out to the people who did the Kickstarter pledges and that, but they're already doing additional printing for selling online.
And then the last question I always hit people with is to give you an opportunity, if you have any ways for your fans to follow what's coming up next, or connect with you. Is it a social media or a website? You know, maybe they want to get DREADSTAR Returns again. When you work on that, how do the people kind of follow what you're up to keep in track?
Our social media skills on both of us are kind of lax.
I used to do social media like crazy, but during COVID, I started just not. And then I'm trying to get my motivation back to that stuff. But
I've never been very good, but we will be on our respective Facebooks
and Instagram.
and Instagram.
I'm James Jameson on Instagram, and my Facebook, you can probably find me that way.
Yeah, Jim Starlin.
You're just
Jim Starlin in some form or another on Facebook and Instagram. And we will make announcements. We will let people know what conventions we're going to be going to. We will be going to some. We're going to one up upstate, somewhere in Washington State.
And Terrificon will be in Connecticut,
which will be in the end of July.
Yeah.
I'm not sure when. It's June in Washington State, right? So, yeah. Okay. See, we stumble through life. Not exactly precise. Yeah. Okay.
It's way down the road, and it's not a great time. But do you know if you have any plans on going to the I call it the mini Comic-Con in San Diego, but it's over kind of the Black Friday weekend? Have you heard about that?
Have heard about it. Don't plan on being on it, but they are doing a virtual San Diego Con next Tuesday, which apparently I'm on a panel.
Oh, okay.
I found out the other day. And it's about people who have gone through injuries and then come back to work on comics. So
too bad it's not people that go through viruses.
Well, actually, we can bring you in here too.
Well, I just want to say once again, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. DREADSTAR Returns, very good read. I want people to check it out. I can again attest the fact that you don't have to have read all 25 years of omnibus history, although it sounds like you can get that too if you want to be a completist. But it is a very fun read, and I want to welcome you back to the comic world, because it was good to have you back again, Jim.
It's good to be. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Right. You take care of that.